On the morning of my wedding, I wasn't trying on my dress or sipping champagne with my friends. I was trying to escape the basement where my future mother-in-law had locked me up. Queen of schemes, right? She thought she had won the game, but I was about to make a move that would put her in checkmate. Let's start with how I crashed her grand toast. Hi, I'm Emily, 25, and you know how people say your wedding day is supposed to be the best day of your life? Yeah, mine started with me waking up tied to a chair in a basement. No, I'm not exaggerating. And the mastermind behind this delightful surprise, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, Linda, 54, whose hobby seems to be making my life a living nightmare. Let me backtrack a bit. It was 6:30 in the morning, the big day. I was at Adam's family mansion, which looked like it belonged in some glossy magazine. Perfect hedges, sparkling windows, and Linda in her usual I run this kingdom mode. Adam, my fiancé, was staying with his best man, as tradition goes, so it was just me and Linda in the house. Yay. Now, Linda and I, let's just say we didn't exactly have the warm and fuzzy Hallmark movie relationship. From the moment Adam introduced me, she decided I was too opinionated, too modern, and too ambitious for her precious son. You know, because being a woman with a career and a backbone is apparently a cardinal sin. Anyway, back to that morning, Linda had been oddly nice, like suspiciously nice. She made me tea, called me dear, and even complimented my dress, which should have been my first clue something was off. But I, being the optimistic fool I was, thought, maybe she's finally warming up to me. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. 5 sips into that tea, the room started spinning. I remember thinking, wow, this chamomile hits different, before everything went black. When I came to, it wasn't the soft glow of my wedding venue that greeted me. Nope. It was the harsh flicker of a single bulb swinging from the ceiling of what I can only describe as a horror movie set. The basement smelled like wet socks and despair, and the chair I was tied to felt like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. My wrists were bound with some kind of rope, not the fancy kind either, more like the stuff you find in a hardware store clearance bin. Don't bother screaming, a voice chirped from above. Linda. Of course, it was Linda. Her tone was sickly sweet, like she was announcing tea time at some royal garden party. No one will hear you. I stared up at the locked door. Linda, what the heck is going on? Let me out. Oh, Emily, she replied, her voice dripping with fake pity. You've always been so dramatic, but don't worry, dear. This is for the best. You're just not the right fit for my son. I felt my jaw drop. You've lost your mind. Adam's going to... Adam, she cut me off, will thank me one day. You're not going to ruin his life by dragging him into your modern nonsense. Oh, that's right. In Linda's world, modern nonsense was code for me not worshiping the ground she walked on. The audacity of this woman. I struggled against the ropes, my heart pounding. But Linda wasn't done. Enjoy your stay, she said with a sickeningly cheerful laugh. Don't go anywhere. And with that, the door slammed shut. So there I was, tied to a chair in a damp basement on the morning of my wedding, courtesy of my future mother-in-law, who had clearly gone off the deep end. And let me tell you, this was just the beginning of what turned out to be the most insane day of my life. If you've ever woken up tied to a chair in a creepy basement, let me tell you, the first thing that hits you is not fear. It's rage. Full-blown, red-hot, I can't believe this is happening to me kind of rage. And Linda? Oh, she didn't just light the fuse. She danced on the dynamite. First things first, the ropes. They were a joke. Seriously, I don't know if she was in a rush or just bad at tying knots, but I managed to wriggle my hands free after about 5 minutes. Let me tell you, though, those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. My wrists were raw, and every move sent a sharp sting up my arms. But hey, freedom was calling. I wasn't about to sit there like a damsel in distress, waiting for some knight in shining armor. Not my style. Once I got my hands loose, I immediately scanned the room. Let's just say this basement was not exactly HGTV material. Cracked cement floors, cobwebs in every corner, and that smell? It was like a mix of old socks and despair. But in the corner, I spotted it. A dusty old toolbox. Jackpot. I crawled over, my legs still wobbly from whatever Linda put in that tea, and flipped it open. Rusty tools stared back at me like they hadn't been used since the Stone Age. A screwdriver caught my eye, and I grabbed it, gripping it like it was Excalibur. I wasn't playing anymore. The door was my next target. Of course, it was locked. Linda was crazy, but she wasn't stupid. I jammed the screwdriver into the lock and started working on it. Each twist and turn felt like a small victory. My heart was pounding so hard it could have been the soundtrack to a horror movie. Just as I felt the lock give way, click, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "Going somewhere, darling?" Her voice came out of nowhere, like one of those villains in a thriller who always seems to show up at the worst possible moment. I spun around, and there she was, standing at the top of the stairs, with this smug look on her face. If I wasn't so furious, I might have been impressed by her timing. "Linda," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible, "let me out. Right now." She tilted her head, like she was genuinely considering it. No, I don't think so. You're quite resourceful, though. I'll give you that." Before I could even think of a snappy comeback, she stormed down the stairs. I had maybe 3 seconds to react, but she was faster than I thought. She grabbed me by the arm and, with way more strength than I expected, shoved me backward. I tripped and fell, landing on the cold, hard floor. The screwdriver flew out of my hand and slid across the room. "You really think you can outsmart me?" she sneered, her voice dripping with condescension. Oh, Emily, sweet, naive Emily. I scrambled to my feet, but Linda was already at the door. She slammed it shut, and I heard the distinct sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. If that wasn't bad enough, the next sound was even worse. Heavy furniture scraping against the floor above me. She was barricading the door. "Let's see you get out of this one," she called down, her tone almost sing-song. I could practically hear the grin on her face. As her footsteps retreated, I sat there in the middle of the basement, breathing hard and clenching my fists. My dress was still crumpled in the corner, a cruel little reminder of what this day was supposed to be. But I wasn't giving up. Linda might have won this round, but the game was far from over. Game on, Linda. Game on. Time does weird things when you're stuck in a basement. Minutes stretch into hours, and every creak or gust of wind sounds like a full-blown rescue mission, until it's not. After what felt like forever, my initial panic had burned out, replaced by a cold, steady fury. This wasn't just about me missing my wedding anymore. Oh no, this was war. And Linda, she had no idea what was coming. Sitting on the damp floor, I glanced around the basement, searching for anything I could use to turn the tide. That's when it hit me, my clutch. Linda, in her infinite arrogance, had tossed it into the corner like it was trash. Little did she know she'd just made a colossal mistake. I scrambled over, prying it open with shaky hands. There it was. My phone, my lifeline, my ticket out of this nightmare. Holding my breath, I hit the power button. The screen lit up like a beacon of hope, until I saw the signal. 1 bar. Seriously? But hey, 1 bar was better than no bar. My fingers flew across the screen as I typed a message to my maid of honor, Sarah. She was 26, a human Swiss Army knife of a friend, and most importantly, not one to back down from a challenge. "Help! Linda locked me in the basement. Don't tell Adam. Bring the cavalry." I hit send and stared at the screen, willing those tiny little dots of the sending animation to move faster. It felt like an eternity, but then delivered. I let out a shaky breath. Now, all I could do was wait, and wait, and wait. The silence was unbearable, broken only by the occasional drip of water from a rusty pipe. I imagined Linda upstairs, schmoozing with the guests, probably spinning some ridiculous story about why the bride wasn't there yet. "Oh, Emily's just feeling a little overwhelmed," she'd say with that syrupy tone of hers. The thought made my blood boil. Finally, a vibration jolted me out of my thoughts. A message from Sarah. "What? Are you serious? Okay, stay calm. We're coming. Don't do anything stupid." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Too late for that, Sarah. As I stared at the message, I heard footsteps above me. Linda's unmistakable voice floated down, sweet as honey, but sharp enough to cut glass. She was greeting the guests, probably acting like she hadn't just committed a felony this morning. "Oh, Adam, darling, don't worry," she cooed. "Emily just needed a little time to herself. You know how brides can be on their big day." My hands clenched into fists. The audacity of this woman. I imagined Adam pacing nervously, probably thinking I had cold feet or something. Linda was manipulating everyone like puppets, and it made my stomach turn. The sound of heels clicking across the floor snapped me back to reality. I couldn't just sit here waiting for Sarah to show up like some damsel in distress. No, I needed a plan. I glanced around the room again, my mind racing. The old toolbox, the rickety shelves, the stack of paint cans. There had to be something here I could use to turn this situation around. The footsteps faded, replaced by muffled laughter and clinking glasses. The party was in full swing, and Linda was reveling in her little victory upstairs. Little did she know, her reign of terror was about to hit a major roadblock. "Stay calm, Emily," I told myself. "The cavalry's coming." If rage could fuel engines, I'd have powered a jet straight through that basement door. My phone buzzed in my hand, snapping me out of my fury. It was Sarah again. "On it! Stall the ceremony." Stall? That was easy for her to say. She wasn't the one sitting in a moldy basement while her mother-in-law from hell played the starring role in a one-woman sabotage show. I could feel the clock ticking. Every second Linda was upstairs spreading lies was a second closer to my wedding imploding. I strained my ears, trying to make out what was happening above. Linda's voice drifted down, sugary, sweet, and dripping with fake concern. "Oh, Adam, darling," she said, her tone like she was consoling a lost puppy. "I hate to say it, but Emily's had a change of heart. Cold feet. It's really for the best, don't you think?" Cold feet. I wanted to storm upstairs and tell everyone what was actually going on, but instead, I took a deep breath. I couldn't let her win. "Where's Emily?" Adam's voice cut through the hum of the crowd. He sounded worried, confused. My heart sank. Linda, never missing a beat, replied, "She's just so independent, Adam. You know how she is. Always putting herself first. She didn't want to hold you back." My grip on the doorframe tightened. How could someone be so effortlessly evil? I was tempted to start pounding on the walls and yelling, but I knew Linda would spin it into some bizarre performance about me needing space. No, I needed to stay calm, or as calm as someone in a crumpled wedding dress could possibly be. I turned back to the basement door. My screwdriver was still wedged into the lock, but that wasn't going anywhere fast. That's when I noticed the hinges, old and rusted, just begging to be loosened. Grinning to myself, I grabbed the screwdriver and went to work. Every twist of the screws felt like a small victory. Sure, the door creaked like it was auditioning for a horror movie, but progress was progress. The first hinge popped free with a satisfying clink. I was halfway through the second when I heard footsteps. "Emily?" a voice hissed. It was Sarah. Relief washed over me so fast I almost dropped the screwdriver. "Down here," I whispered back. Moments later, the basement door cracked open, and Sarah peeked in, looking like she was ready to fight Linda with her bare hands. Behind her was the wedding planner, who looked less like someone managing a dream event and more like someone navigating a full-blown disaster. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, rushing down the stairs. "Do I look okay?" I snapped, waving at my torn dress and the toolbox crime scene around me. But then I sighed. "Sorry, yes, I'm fine. Just get me out of here before Linda ruins everything." Sarah nodded, her game face on. "We're getting you out, but we can't let Linda know yet. If she realizes you're loose, she'll do something even worse. We'll play along for now." The wedding planner, bless her, was already on her phone, texting someone. I assumed it was her team. "I'll keep the guests distracted," she said. "You just get ready." "Ready?" I gestured at myself. "I'm literally covered in dirt and trauma." Sarah smirked. "Then we'll turn it into a revenge makeover. Let's go, Cinderella. Your wedding isn't over yet." With that, we got to work. Linda had no idea what was coming. If revenge is a dish best served cold, then I was about to serve Linda the equivalent of an iceberg. The plan was simple, but it had to be flawless. Sarah had managed to sneak a spare dress from her car, a sleek white backup gown I'd packed just in case. And wow, was this the case. "Okay, we're doing this," Sarah whispered, handing me the dress. "But keep it quiet. If Linda even suspects, she'll go full villain mode." I didn't need convincing. The moment that dress touched my skin, something shifted. Gone was the frazzled, dirt-streaked Emily from the basement. In her place stood a bride with a mission to ruin Linda's reign of terror once and for all. Meanwhile, upstairs Linda was in her element. Sarah had managed to record part of her little speech while I was changing, and it was as cringeworthy as you'd expect. "Adam," she cooed, her voice so sweet it probably gave someone a cavity. "I know this is hard, but Emily just isn't the one for you. Trust me, dear, this is for the best." Oh, Linda, you really thought you'd won. Once I was ready, Sarah led me through the side entrance of the house. "She's about to toast to your absence," she whispered. Perfect timing. We peeked into the living room, where guests had gathered. Linda stood in the center, champagne flute in hand, playing the role of grieving mother perfectly. Adam sat nearby, looking equal parts confused and heartbroken. My stomach twisted at the sight of him, but that just fueled my determination. "And so," Linda announced, raising her glass, "while today didn't go as planned, let's toast to new beginnings, to my son Adam, who deserves so much better." That's my cue. I stepped into the room, heels clicking against the polished floor. Heads turned, and the chatter died instantly. All eyes were on me, and I didn't waste a second. "Surprise," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "Miss me?" The collective gasp was everything I'd dreamed of. Linda froze, her glass suspended midair, the color draining from her face faster than you could say, "Busted." Adam stood up so quickly he nearly knocked over his chair. "Emily," he stammered, rushing toward me. "What's going on? Where have you been?" "Oh, your mother has been very busy," I said, my voice dripping with mock sweetness. I turned to Linda, who looked like she was about to faint. "Care to explain, Linda? Or should I?" The room erupted into whispers, guests leaning in to get the scoop. Linda opened her mouth, probably to spin some ridiculous lie, but I wasn't about to let her steal the spotlight. "She locked me in the basement," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "On my wedding day, tied me to a chair, said I wasn't good enough for her son." Gasps and murmurs filled the air as the crowd turned to Linda. Her carefully curated mask of innocence was cracking faster than cheap porcelain. "That's absurd," Linda sputtered, finally finding her voice. "She's making this up." "Am I?" I shot back, pulling out my phone. Sarah had already sent me the recordings of Linda's earlier rants. With a few taps, I hit play, and Linda's voice filled the room. "Emily just isn't the one for you. Trust me, dear, this is for the best." The room fell silent again. You could have heard a pin drop. Linda's face went from ghostly white to beet red in record time. Adam turned to her, his voice shaking. "Mom, is this true? Did you really lock her in the basement?" Linda stammered, her words tripping over themselves. "Adam, I was just trying to protect you. She's not right for you." I crossed my arms, smirking. "Well, Adam, shall we?" Linda's reign of chaos was officially over, and I wasn't even close to being done. Grabbing the microphone from the DJ stand felt like taking the sword in a battle I was destined to win. My heart was pounding so loud I thought the speakers might pick it up, but I wasn't about to back down. The crowd stared at me, a mix of curiosity and confusion plastered on their faces. Linda, standing frozen in the corner, already looked like she was calculating her next move. Too late. "Hi, everyone," I started, my voice steady but loud enough to fill the room. "Before we kick off the ceremony, I thought I'd share a little story about how I spent my morning. Spoiler, it wasn't sipping mimosas or getting my hair done." "It is." The crowd exchanged puzzled looks. Adam, standing by the altar, looked like he didn't know whether to run to me or start questioning his reality. "Linda?" She made the first move. Of course she did. "Emily, dear," she interjected, her voice strained but still clinging to its fake sweetness. "This really isn't the time." Sarah, who had been hovering nearby like a guardian angel with a vengeance, stepped between us. "Sit down, Linda," she said firmly. "This is Emily's moment." The room went quiet. Linda's face turned a shade of red that almost made me laugh. Almost. I took a deep breath and launched into it. This morning, I woke up tied to a chair, in the basement, of this house. Gasps rippled through the room, like someone had just dropped a bomb. Good. That was the point. Why, you ask? Because Linda, my adoring future mother-in-law, decided I wasn't good enough for her son. So she drugged me, dragged me to the basement, and locked me up. I turned to Linda, my eyes narrowing. "Do you want to tell them, or should I keep going?" The whispers in the room started picking up speed. People were leaning toward each other, murmuring in disbelief. Linda, now visibly panicking, raised her hands in mock outrage. "She's lying!" she screeched, her composure crumbling faster than a house of cards. "Emily has always been a drama queen. This is just one of her little stunts." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people seemed unsure who to believe. That's when Sarah stepped up, pulling her phone out like a lawyer unveiling the smoking gun. "Really, Linda?" Sarah said, her voice sharp, "because the security cameras at this very house tell a different story." With one tap, Sarah played the footage she had pulled from the security system. The room fell silent as the video showed Linda dragging me, unconscious and dressed in my wedding robe, down the stairs to the basement. The crowd collectively gasped, their disbelief turning into outrage. Linda stumbled backward, her mouth opening and closing, like a fish out of water. That's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice cracking. "Really?" I shot back, crossing my arms. "Because it looks exactly like what I just described." The room exploded with chatter. Guests turned to each other, shaking their heads in shock. Adam's face was a mix of anger and heartbreak as he looked at his mother. The DJ, bless his heart, even stopped the music, leaving nothing but the sound of Linda's world crumbling around her. "I was just trying to protect you," Linda shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. "She's not right for you, Adam. She's—" "Enough," Adam cut her off, his voice low but firm. "You've done enough." Linda froze, her hands trembling. The crowd was no longer on her side, and she knew it. All eyes were on her, but not with admiration or sympathy, just judgment. I stepped forward, looking directly at Adam. "Shall we continue?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. "I think we've wasted enough time." Adam nodded, his jaw clenched, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt like the day might actually turn out okay. Linda, meanwhile, was left standing in the corner, a ghost of her former self. And honestly, that was the best wedding gift I could have asked for. The room was pure chaos. Whispers turned into full-blown conversations as the guests tried to make sense of what just happened. People who had spent years worshiping Linda and her perfect hostess act now looked at her like she was the villain in a soap opera. Spoiler, she absolutely was. Adam, bless his heart, stood frozen for a second, processing everything. Then, to my surprise, he walked straight over to me and stood by my side, his hand tightening around mine like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "How could you do this to her?" Adam said, his voice steady but loud enough to cut through the noise. He turned to Linda, his gaze sharper than I'd ever seen it. "Mom, what is wrong with you?" Linda, who had clearly been relying on her usual charm to bail her out, looked like a deer caught in headlights. Her carefully crafted facade had cracked wide open, and now she was scrambling to piece it back together. I was just trying to protect you," she stammered, her voice trembling. "She's not good enough for you, Adam. She's manipulative and controlling, and I couldn't let you make this mistake." Adam's face twisted into something between heartbreak and anger. "Protect me? You called drugging my fiancée and locking her in a basement protection. You didn't care about me, Mom. You cared about being in control." Linda's eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but no one was rushing to her defense. Guests were shaking their heads, whispering to each other, and avoiding eye contact with her. Even her closest friends looked uncomfortable, like they were debating whether to quietly slip out the door. "I did it for your own good," Linda tried again, her voice breaking. "You'll thank me someday." That was the final straw for Adam. "Thank you," he said, his voice rising. "You tried to ruin my wedding. You humiliated me. You put Emily through hell. I'm done, Mom. Get out." Linda's face went pale. "Adam, you don't mean that," she said, tears starting to stream down her cheeks. "I'm your mother." "And I love you," Adam said, his voice shaking. "But I can't keep making excuses for you. Leave." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Linda stood there for a moment, completely stunned, before the tears started flowing harder. She stumbled backward, her perfect mascara streaking down her face like some kind of poetic justice. The crowd didn't make it easy for her. A few people even booed softly as she stormed toward the door. "Unbelievable," someone muttered. "I knew she was intense, but this?" Linda paused at the door, looking over her shoulder like she was expecting Adam to change his mind. When he didn't, she straightened up, plastered on a defiant expression, and slammed the door behind her. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then, like someone had flipped a switch, applause erupted. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make me smile. Sarah gave me a thumbs up from across the room, and the DJ started playing a soft tune to fill the awkward gap. Adam turned to me, his shoulders sagging. "I'm so sorry, Emily," he said quietly. "I had no idea she was capable of this." "It's not your fault," I replied, squeezing his hand, "but I'm glad you stood up for us." The wedding wasn't over yet, but Linda's dramatic exit, that was the kind of finale no one would forget any time soon. After all the drama, you'd think I'd be too frazzled to walk down the aisle. But as I stood there, waiting for the music to start, I felt unstoppable. Sure, my dress wasn't the one I had spent months picking out, and my makeup had been hastily redone in the church bathroom by Sarah. But none of that mattered. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a declaration. Linda didn't win. I did. The music started, and as I stepped into the aisle, all eyes turned toward me. And not in a look at that beautiful bride kind of way. It was more of a, oh my gosh, did she actually escape a basement this morning vibe. And honestly, I loved it. Adam waited for me at the altar, his face a mix of awe and relief. As I reached him, he took my hand and whispered, "You're amazing, you know that?" "Tell me something I don't know," I teased, earning a chuckle from the guests in the front row, who could hear us. The ceremony itself was perfect, even if it started a little late. The vows were heartfelt, the I do's were loud and clear, and by the time Adam kissed me, the crowd erupted into cheers like it was the finale of a rom-com. Except this wasn't fiction. This was my life, and I had earned every bit of that applause. The reception was where the real fun began. After the whole Linda debacle, everyone seemed extra eager to let loose. The DJ kicked things off with upbeat music, and the dance floor was packed before dinner was even served. But the highlight of the night? Sarah's speech. She grabbed the mic, her glass of champagne in hand, and gave me a wink. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "today we celebrate not just a wedding, but a true story of survival." The crowd chuckled, already knowing where this was going. "To Emily," she continued, raising her glass, "the ultimate escape artist, who proved that not even locked doors, basements, or, let's face it, crazy mother-in-laws can stop her from living her best life." The laughter was contagious, and even Adam couldn't help but grin. Sarah wasn't done, though. "And to Adam, the poor guy who now has to deal with Linda at Thanksgiving. Good luck, buddy. You are going to need it." The room practically exploded with laughter. Even I doubled over, tears streaming down my face, not from the drama, but from pure, unfiltered joy. For the first time that day, it felt like the weight of everything that had happened had lifted. As the night wore on, Linda's name became less of a shadow and more of a running joke. Guests came up to congratulate us, sharing stories about how they'd always suspected something was off about her. One of Adam's uncles even muttered, "Honestly, this wedding is way more exciting than any I've been to. You should thank her for the entertainment." By the time the cake was cut and the last dance wrapped up, Adam and I were ready to sneak away. As we stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I couldn't help but look up at the stars. "Hey," Adam said, pulling me close. "Even after everything, this was the best day of my life." I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. "Same, but next time, let's skip the basement drama?" He laughed. "Deal." And just like that, our happily ever after began, not in the way we planned, but exactly the way we needed. Linda's shadow no longer loomed over us. This was our day, our story, and no one, not even her, could take it away.